When people think of heating during World War II, they imagine, roaring stoves or heavy winter coats. What they rarely understand is that most frontline soldiers had neither. Heat was scarce, fuel was limited, and honestly, exposure killed more men than gunfire in some campaigns. Soldiers survived because they learned how to trap, redirect and conserve heat using methods that were quiet, portable and, brutally efficient. These were not comfort solutions. They were survival systems refined under pressure, and many of them still work inside modern homes when the power fails. Why frontline soldiers treated heat as a system rather than a single source. The first lesson soldiers learned was that heat generation meant nothing without heat retention. A small fire or stove was useless if wind, drafts and cold surfaces stripped warmth away. Soldiers focused on sealing gaps, reducing airflow and concentrating heat around the body rather than warming entire spaces. Indoors today, this principle applies directly during outages by isolating one room and preventing heat loss before adding any heat source. How body heat was deliberately captured instead of wasted. At the front, soldiers often relied on shared body heat. Men slept close together, aligned shoulder to shoulder, minimizing exposed surface area. Blankets were tucked tightly underneath, rather than draped loosely. Indoors, this same concept works by sleeping closer together, using fewer but tighter layers, and sealing bedding against drafts instead of piling on loose covers. Why soldiers heated objects rather than air whenever possible? Air loses heat quickly. Solid objects hold it. Soldiers warmed rocks, metal canteens, or mess tins near fires and placed them near their core or feet. Indoors today, this can be replicated by heating bricks, stones, or water bottles using safe heat sources and placing them near the body to provide slow, radiant warmth. Now, here's the thing. Ground insulation actually mattered more than overhead heat. It's a bit counterintuitive, but cold really does rise from below. Soldiers quickly learned that insulating the ground beneath them was key to preventing massive heat loss. Instead of piling things on top, they would use packs, branches, straw, or even spare clothing right under their bodies. When you bring that lesson indoors, it means sleeping off the floor, using mattresses, folded blankets, or even stacked clothing to block heat loss into cold concrete or tile. It's a simple trick, but it makes all the difference. So, why did soldiers use reflective heat techniques ages before modern materials came about? Well, at the front, they would position fires against earth walls, the sides of their shelters, or even vehicles, just to reflect heat back toward themselves. It's quite clever, really. Indoors, you can do something similar, using reflective surfaces like foil-backed insulation, metal trays, or even baking sheets placed behind safe heat sources. This way, you redirect warmth into your living space instead of letting it vanish into the walls. Let's talk about controlling drafts, because soldiers knew a thing or two about that before even thinking about increasing the heat. Veterans understood that blocking airflow was actually more effective than burning more fuel. They'd seal tent flaps with cloth, mud, or even snow, whatever was handy. And indoors, it's the same principle. Towels under doors, sealed vents, and blocking off unused rooms can drastically reduce heat loss and make whatever warmth you have go much, much further. Layered clothing started to replace open flames whenever possible, and there was a good reason for that. Open heat sources were not only dangerous, but also easily detectable by the enemy. So soldiers began to layer their clothing in a strategic way, focusing on keeping their core warm while making sure their hands and feet stayed dry. Even indoors, wearing layers and insulating the torso can really reduce the need for any kind of active heating, especially if there's only a short power outage or something like that. Now, let's talk about moisture control and how it actually became a heating strategy in itself. Wet clothing, well, it just destroys your warmth instantly, doesn't it? That's why soldiers made a point to dry their socks, gloves and shirts whenever they could, even if it was just for a short bit. Indoors, keeping your clothes dry, rotating your layers and managing condensation can actually prevent cold stress far better than just turning up the heat in the room. Now, let's talk about why soldiers heated small zones instead of trying to warm up entire shelters. You see, frontline shelters were rarely, if ever, fully heated. Instead, soldiers focused on heating just the sleeping areas or the work zones. Even today, if you lose power, heating a single room where everyone gathers is much more efficient than attempting to warm the whole house during an outage. So, how did routine and discipline come into play when there wasn't constant heat? Well, soldiers relied on structured routines to keep warm, alternating periods of rest with movement. Indoors, just a bit of light activity, scheduled warming periods and controlled rest can really help prevent cold stress without burning through loads of fuel. Now, you might wonder why these old WWII heating tricks still matter today. The thing is, modern homes lose heat quickly without power because they depend on systems, not on sound principles. Soldiers managed to survive because they understood how heat behaves, how airflow works, the importance of moisture management, and of course, insulation. These techniques still work because, well, the laws of physics haven't changed. If this guide has helped you understand how soldiers survived those brutal winters with almost nothing, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more WWII survival knowledge grounded in real history. Share this video with your fellow history buffs and anyone interested in preparedness. These lessons were forged in hardship, and honestly, they still save lives today.